Hello, I'm Elda Brogi. I am the scientific coordinator of the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom. And my task today is to give you an overview of our project and of the results of our last implementation of the Media Pluralism Monitor. Please, just a few remarks, introductory remarks on the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom. Something was already said by Professor Laffan, but the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom was established in 2012 at the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Studies at the European University Institute in Florence. And it was established with the grant of the European Union. It contributes to research and policy on protection and promotion of media pluralism and media freedom at national, European and international level. Its goal is to foster the research and the awareness on issues on media pluralism and media freedom, since the European Union does not have a specific competence in the treaties in this regard. What are our main activities? First of all, research. Our first policy report was on EU competences in respect of media pluralism and media freedom. As I already said, this is a very hot topic, since the treaties do not foresee any specific competence on that, and it was our aim to see what are the possibilities of the European Union to intervene in this very important field. We have done a study on freedom of the media in the Western Balkans that was a sort of complementary study, in a sense, to the first one in 2013. And we studied what is the situation of freedom of the media and media pluralism in the candidate countries in the Western Balkans. Another main study we have done recently is a study on a comparative analysis on freedom of expression online, the rule of law and web intermediaries, and we have done it for the Council of Europe, namely. We run a lot of complementary activities to research. In particular, we have a very well-established summer school for journalists and media practitioners. And this year, in July, we are doing our 5th edition. Many young journalists from all over Europe and beyond. This year, we had received application from 41 countries all over the world, are gathering in Florence to attend this course, this week of courses on journalism, freedom of expression, and we consider journalism and freedom of expression from different perspectives, starting from the legal, the economic, the socio-political, ethical, so on and so forth. Then we have done a project under the European Center for Press and Media Freedom, another grant of the European Commission, actually a pilot project of the European Parliament on journalism, strengthening journalism in Europe, tools, networking and training in 2004. Then we hold many conferences, seminars and more. I suggest you to visit our website for further information. After the self-promotion, I'll go to the core of our discussion today, that is the Media Pluralism Monitor project. This is one of the main project we have, and this is a project that comes from the 2009 independent study on indicators for media pluralism in the member states towards a risk-based approach, a study that was that was produced by a consortium of universities led by the University of Leuven in 2009 at the request of the European Commission. This is our starting point because this was a tool that was designed to identify potential risks to media pluralism in the member states. And in 2014, under a project co-financed by the European Union, a European Parliament pilot project, we were asked to develop a streamlined version of this tool that consisted of 166 indicators. It was really a heavy tool, and we applied it, as was already said, to 9 EU member states, namely Belgium, Bulgaria, Denmark, Estonia, France, Greece, Hungary, Italy, and UK. After this first pilot test implementation, we did a second pilot test in 2015 on the remaining 19 EU countries. And as was already said, now we are running our first preparatory action financed by the European Parliament and the European Commission on 28 countries plus 2 candidates, namely Montenegro and Turkey. So what are the features of this tool? My presentation today will focus on the last results, the methodology, and the results of the last implementation of the NPM, what we call NPM 2015. We analyzed 19 countries, the countries that are left from the first implementation in 2014, those that you can see in the map. We consider 4 risk areas. As I mentioned, the NPM is a tool that aims at assessing the risks for media pluralism. And we measure the risk in these 4 main risk areas, namely basic protection. The basic protection represents the regulatory backbone of the media sector in ever contemporary democracy. So we consider all the indicators that are guarantee the fundamental freedoms, fundamental rights, freedom of expression, freedom of information, the independence of the authorities, for instance. Then we consider market plurality, that is another area of risk. And in this case, we deal with media ownership. That is, let's say, the economic component of pluralism that is widely considered essential for the assessment of the level of media pluralism in any given context. We consider the level of political independence. So indicators of political independence are designed to assess the risks for the political independence of the national media system and its media outlets, and what we called social inclusiveness. We consider indicators that relate to access to and availability of media for different and particularly vulnerable groups of population, disabled people, for instance, but mostly minorities. So these are under the 4 areas of risk. We considered in 2015, we considered 19 indicators. Under the basic protection, you can see protection of freedom of expression, right to information. We had a specific focus on the journalistic profession, the standards of the profession, and the protection of journalists, the independence of national authorities. Under the area of market plurality, we had 3 indicators on transparency of media ownership, concentration of media ownership, and concentration of cross-media ownership. Under political independence, political bias in the media, politicization of control of media outlets, politicization of control over media distribution networks, state advertising, independence of PSM, independence of news agencies. And under social inclusiveness, access to media for different social and cultural groups and local communities, availability of media platform for the community media, access for physically challenged people, centralization of the media system, because this is one under the social inclusiveness we consider the geographical aspects of pluralism, and universal coverage of the PSM and media literacy. We found that, for instance, media literacy is an indicator that more and more is getting important to assess clearly the level of media pluralism in the digital environment. So on methodology, still on methodology, we assessed these risks. We assess the risk for each of these indicators using a questionnaire that entails legal, economic, and socio-political questions. We consider media pluralism, considering all the 4 risk areas and assessing the indicators and the risk areas according to legal, economic, and socio-political questions. We use a notion of media pluralism that encompasses political, cultural, geographical, structural, and institutional dimensions. We try to have a holistic measurement of media pluralism. The NPM is one of the main features of the NPM is to consider a lot of different aspects that concur to the assessment of media pluralism. We developed a standardized aggregation method, how to measure, let's say a formula to measure the indicators, the level of risk for each indicator that is standardized. We elaborated this standardized aggregation method that balances the evaluation of the legal framework with evaluation of the actual practice. So we consider both how the legal framework, for instance, guarantees, safeguards a certain freedom, and how the freedom is effectively safeguarded. We use a wide network of national country teams that are collecting the data according to the questions of our questionnaire. And the data that are collected through a online database, online platform that, again, we developed. And another feature of the methodology of the NPM is that for certain issues that are, let's say, maybe controversial and need a more qualitative assessment, that are somehow more sensitive, we involve a group of experts that are asked to validate the replies, the answers given by our country team. And the CMPF collects all the data, coordinates and analyzes the data collected for the assessment of the risk and a comparative analysis. So what are the results of the MPM 2015? The results are, we analyze the results per areas of risk. When it comes to basic protection, as you can see from the map, the situation seems to be quite smooth, in the sense that the level of risk for media pluralism, according to basic protection analysis, shows that almost all countries are score a low risk for a low risk in basic protection. What does it mean? That there are no major problems when it comes to indicators that assess the fundamentals, the basic guarantees of a democratic state, of a democratic country. For instance, protection of freedom of expression scores quite good, and protection, independence of and effectiveness of national media authorities scores pretty good. This is an indicator that we had to refine because it wasn't perfect how it was structured. We see that in this domain, the main problems are in the level of protection, let's say, and of journalists. So journalistic profession, standards for journalists, for the journalistic profession, and the protection of journalists. This is an indicator that scores high or medium risk in many of the countries analyzed. Even protection of right to information is not so perfect, in the sense that there are at least 2 countries that, if I'm not mistaken, Austria and Luxembourg, that are not scoring low risk. I mean, from the map, we saw the situation looks pretty nice, in a sense that most of the countries are scoring low risk. Most of the countries are colored in blue. There is just the case of Romania that is scoring medium risk, but the situation is not so rosy if we consider that in each single indicators, at least in the first 3, there are countries that score medium or high risk. So in an area like the EU, where the basic fundamentals, freedoms should be considered granted, this must be problematic. This is the histograms that shows the level of risk of each of the analyzed countries. The second area we considered was market plurality. Market plurality is the area that scores the worst, in the sense that, as you see, the average is 51. The European average is 51%. And from the map, you can see that there are many oranges and many reds. And because media concentration is an issue, media markets are concentrated. And this is a feature of most of European countries. These are the average scores for each indicator. As you can see, the indicator that scores the highest is the one on concentration in media ownership. We have bad scores in another indicator, that is transparency in media ownership, that sometimes balances bad scores in the previous two indicators. Sometimes, like in the case of Finland, because our country teams assess that in Finland there is no the level of transparency is not so low. In this case, the level of risk for media transparency gives then this kind of results. For instance, you can see in the histogram Finland scores a high risk when it comes to the analysis of market plurality and ownership concentration. The other aspect, the other area we considered was political independence. Surprisingly, somehow the level of risk for political independence is not so high, but of course it's a medium risk. That means that, again, in Europe, where that is an area of democracy, of course this risk is still a worrisome risk. These are the indicators we took into consideration, and these are the scores for each indicator, the average of the score for the 19 countries we considered. We found that the worst performing indicator was the one on state advertising. This is, let's say, a controversial issue because state advertising is a real problem, a very big problem in Central Eastern Europe. And there are different practices in Eastern Europe that sometimes are not comparable with those that are present in Western countries. Of course, this was the area where we took advantage of the fact that we used a group of experts in order to assess, for instance, political bias in the media, the level of political bias in the media. Given that the project and the time frame of the project and the resources of the project doesn't allow us to do a thorough content analysis on the when it comes to political communication. It's very interesting, the indicator on independence of PSM governance and funding, because in this period it gave us a very clear picture of what's going on in Europe in this regard, what are the trends and the best practices, and what are the, let's say, the fundamental principles, the principles that are shared by old constitutional traditions in Europe in regard of this particular issue. This is the situation, for political independence, the scores of the whole domain for the whole area for each country. The last area we considered was social inclusiveness. This is an area that we created to replace what in the 2009 monitor was geographical pluralism, cultural pluralism, and media types pluralism. And these are the indicators we took into consideration, and these are the scores. We analyzed the availability of media platform for community media. That is the indicator that scores the highest. We are, even now that we are implementing again the MPM over EU28 plus 2 candidates, we are trying to boost this indicator on media literacy because we found it is very important. And yes, we try to grasp how the media take into account minorities and local communities, and how it is possible to tackle, through media literacy, to assess somehow what are the instruments to manage information online, because internet is very problematic. Assessing media pluralism for the internet environment is very important, but still it's very hard to find a way to measure how internet is plural, if and how much internet is plural. This is the histogram that shows the level of risks for pluralism, for social inclusiveness. These are the indicators, the scores that have the worst scores, and we already described them. A few slides to tell that the MPM 2016 is ongoing. We are analyzing 30 countries and we revised partially the indicators. Again, the main difficulties nowadays are on online dimension of media pluralism, because it's very difficult to find indicators to measure the level of media pluralism online. And maybe Professor Parko later on can give you some hints on what are the main changes in the MPM 2016. We took into account, we learned our lesson from the previous implementations, and we tried to improve the tool. As was already said by Madame McGuinness, the tool should be, it's a really good way to collect information and data. We realized it in these years of implementation. It provides trends, it provides information and data, it provides best practices, examples for regulatory policy adjustments, could be used as an early warning system, and provides standards for media freedom and pluralism that can be useful in the enlargement process for non-EU countries in general, and for the establishment of common practices in data collection and analysis, and of course, to foster the democratic debate. Thank you for your attention.